Everybody's more than well aware of what's going on in our nation's capital, that the search for the new speaker after Kevin McCarthy was bounced, still a lot of work to do, and that's putting it nicely. There are now, I believe, 9 candidates for the speakership, and nobody is able to get the needed 217 votes, as many of you are probably aware. We are going to dig in on this just a little bit more with a man who knows a lot about this and all things politics. Former chairman of the Illinois GOP, Pat Brady. Pat, great to be with you again.
Hi, Pat.
Good to see you.
Hey,
How
Rob.
are you?
What's going on, guys?
How are you? Thanks for joining us bright and early on this Tuesday. We appreciate it. So help us out here. I mean, it's you almost need a scorecard to figure this one out. It's like Scalise, he couldn't get it. Jim Jordan, few votes, and it's like what's going on? It's really paralyzed government, hasn't it?
Oh, yeah, there is no Congress right now, and the things they need to get done, like the spending bills and for foreign aid and the government spending bill, is not getting done. So it'll get done, but it's an embarrassing process, by their own words, for Republicans and for the country, that they can't effectively govern. They can't agree on a speaker. It's been a horrible process. And if this most recent round, I think the favorite is Representative Tom Emmer from Minnesota. The favorite right now is him. If he can't pull it off, the next move is they're probably going to have to get some Democratic votes to get it done, or it may not get done.
Well, Pat, explain the reason. And I think we know this. There are, 8 individuals that are kind of blocking what's happening. They're holding out because it's not who they want. Because if it isn't Tom Emmer from Minnesota, I mean, it's just an embarrassment. We got to figure this out.
Yeah, and there's 2 votes. They go back and they do a private vote within the party caucus or conference, but it's more than the 8 now. This all started because Matt Gaetz, the guy from Florida, wanted to raise some money, so he threw out Speaker McCarthy, but he didn't have a plan. And now we're in this process where they're trying to find a new speaker, and they just can't get consensus. It's a kind of a split. It's not just the 8. There's others that don't. The far right wing of the Republican caucus that doesn't want to govern, just doesn't want to vote for anybody that they don't think is meets the purity test for them. But I think I see some cracks in that coalition, and I think people realize how stupid they look by doing this, and hopefully they can get together and vote for a guy like Emmer, who's very conservative, but he's also a guy that knows how to raise money and win campaigns. The reality is the Democrats are enjoying this the most because Kevin McCarthy, the former speaker, was one of the best fundraisers in the history of the country. So he was a real A player in campaigns and raising money, and the Democrats are thrilled he's gone, and he's got to thank Matt Gaetz for that.
I know you don't speak for the far right wing of your party, Pat, but I think we've already established that it's embarrassing and that it's absolutely polarizing people. But I mean, there has to be sort of an end game here. You can't just not govern, especially when you need to be passing some spending bills to keep the government open by, mid-November. I mean, so there's some real business that needs to be taken care of. And this is really, in essence, a self-inflicted wound by parts of the Republican Party.
Yeah, the 8. And I wouldn't even call them far right, Rob. They have no ideology at all. They just don't want government. They don't want to govern. And Matt Gaetz wants to run for governor of Florida. This is the way he gets attention. This is the way he raises money. They're not conservatives. They're just bomb throwers. They're political terrorists, and they don't care. But the reality is there has to be an end game, and the end game is going to be, if they can't agree on somebody, is they're going to have to reach across the aisle and get Democratic votes, which is going to mean some compromises in how Congress runs. Probably the far right crazies won't like it, but it's probably something we need in order to get away from all this divided government where people just can't get anything done. But the reality is that's what could be happening here in a couple of weeks is we got a candidate that will actually attract Democratic votes. And for the Democrats to come over and vote for somebody like that, there's going to have to be some concessions made on how chairmanships are run and how legislation gets done. But that's kind of what we're looking at, I think, to finish this up.
It looks like is it 8 or 9 Republicans running for the speaker? You're saying that Tim Emmer of Minnesota is probably the likely guy. Can they whittle that down to 3? And when does this the vote happen for the person that they choose?
Well, they're meeting this. I thought they were going to meet last night, but I think they're meeting this morning in private, and that'll whittle it down because once they vote within their private caucus, they only put one person out on the floor.
Right.
And so they kind of have the battle in private, which is good. And it is a internal party function. But this will all get done, and it'll get worked out. It's a bad look for Republicans. It's a bad look for the country, particularly given that the world's kind of lost its mind the last couple of weeks. But we all end up paying for it when things don't get done. But there needs to be a reset on all this. It's so bad right now, so hyper partisan. So there's no way we can work with the other side. It's just not the way that conservatives governed when Reagan was in, or any of the Bushes, or it just doesn't work. But the party's got to wake up and recognize that the Donald Trump approach to government doesn't work. It's been a disaster since he's been the spokesperson or leader of the Republican Party. We lost the House, the Senate, the White House. We should have a huge majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. We lost 2 congressional seats so we can directly put on Trump. And we've got super minorities in both houses here in Illinois. That's because the Republican brand is so bad right now in the suburbs where you win elections because of Trump and the way he's governed and the scorched earth approach. So Republicans got to wake up and they got to get beyond Trump. And the reality is he's likely going to the penitentiary next fall, and we certainly don't want him as nominee for our party.
I know the answer to this question, but I want you to answer it for us from an 815 area code, a text. Jim Jordan was far right, so why didn't he get in? I think it means you need more votes. What do you say?
Well, you need more votes, but Jim Jordan, and to his credit, had moderated somewhat. But John Boehner, the former speaker, used to call him a political terrorist, and Jim Jordan's the guy that's running the impeachment inquiry. And I still think that one of the reasons he didn't get it. There are 18 House members who live in districts that Joe Biden won, and Jim Jordan has been out throwing bombs for 7 or 8 years, leading the Biden impeachment. So it's going to be really tough for those people to vote for him in a district that President Biden won. That being said, Jim Jordan got the least number of votes in the conference, the private vote, of any speaker in the history of the conference. So it wasn't just far right. It was a lot of people in the conference didn't want him. That being said, they got to agree on somebody. So again, when they say far right, that's kind of misleading. They aren't far right. They just don't want to govern.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. It's just, again, if you take a look back at this, guys, this is just bad. If you can't govern, you can't get things done. It's so bad for your brand. Why would you contribute or support or get out and walk for people that can't govern or don't want to govern?
Well, it also makes me think about, like, you're talking about, hey, Matt Gaetz needed to raise money, so he just
he
did the
this
McCarthy thing. And it's like the people in that district presumably would say, hey, nice job on, getting rid of the speaker. But at some point, don't you have to be accountable to your constituents and actually do something that has meaning when it comes to governing? Or can you just throw the bombs and be a provocateur and things of that nature?
Well, you can, but if it works in your district, like Marjorie Taylor Greene's district or Gates's district, they've gerrymandered these districts so much or drawn them so they're pretty much either Republican or Democrat. So you can get away with it. But the reality is when you only have a 4 or 5 seat majority in the House, this is what you're going to deal with. And again, all this is on Trump. We should have, as Republicans, a 30-seat majority. But he was so unpopular that we're losing in places we should be winning because of him and his approach. We need to get back to the Reagan-esque approach to government, which is, hey, we can disagree, but we don't have to be idiots. And things get done, and we do well. The conservative ideology, I think, is still somewhat popular, but when it gets tainted with a guy like Trump, who just every day makes one more idiotic statement after another, people just get sick of it, particularly suburban women. They can't stand him, and that's just the reality. But it'll get done, and the Democrats have their own issues. But no one's shining a light on them right now. They have their own divisions because the Republicans are sucking all the air out of the room because of all this nonsense.
That is some excellent analysis. Former chairman of the Illinois GOP, Pat Brady. You're a good man, Pat. Thanks for coming on and
hey, anytime. Hey, you heard from Cochran? Is he over there in Gladiator School? What's he doing in Italy?
He's in Gladiator School. He's trying to paint the Sistine Chapel. We don't know.
We need to call him.
He might have had a layover somewhere, and he's playing golf in Florida. We don't know.
That's why we need a Steve Cochran call-in. We need to figure out what's going on.
Soon
but
we will have
the
one,
people
Pat.
want to know, Pat, and they have the absolute right to know. Hey, Pat, thanks for joining us.
All right, see you guys. Thanks.
All right.